I still remember vividly how it felt as my car turned onto the old dirt road that led into the neighborhood in the northern suburbs of Asheville, where I grew up, where every wall held memories I had tried to forget. It was Wednesday afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving. The sky was cloudy, cold, and damp, as if the air itself were full of unsaid words. It had been 2 years since I had been home. 2 years since I had last stood in a kitchen filled with the scent of pumpkin pie and had been brushed past by my mother as if I were a maid, not her firstborn daughter. Actually, I wasn't planning on going home. I had prepared the perfect excuse to decline. My cafe had to open early on Friday. I had a big order to prepare, and even my best friend Kira volunteered to pretend to be a VIP if I needed proof. But then my mother called. Her voice, though as gentle as ever, had a tone that made me feel as if I were standing in the dock. "Naomi, Grandma is coming this year. It might be the last time you get to sit down with her for Thanksgiving. You don't want to be the one who doesn't show up, do you?" I was the only child who didn't live nearby. Alyssa and Micah were both around. I, the rebellious one, the rebel one, as my mother would call me when she talked to others, was the only one who strayed from the family script. So I hung up, took a deep breath, and texted back just 2 words. "I'm home." The familiar 2-story house appeared, still white and stripped of bougainvillea. I had barely stepped through the front door when I heard laughter from the kitchen. A wave of anxiety ran through me like an undercurrent, for no one but my mother. "Oh, there's Naomi," Alyssa shouted as if I was a late delivery person. My mother walked past me, a tray of cookies in her arms, her eyes glancing over me as if I were a light bulb that didn't need to be turned on. No hugs, no hellos, not a smile. "Take off your shoes, don't dirty the floor." Alyssa just mopped it. I chuckled to myself. It seemed like I was still an object to be controlled, and not an adult who had just driven 3 hours home just to not disappoint my grandmother. I spent the afternoon helping clear the table, chopping vegetables, and stacking dishes. Everyone laughed and shared stories. When Alyssa told me she was going to be promoted to vice president of marketing, even at her boyfriend's company, the whole family cheered as if she had just won the Nobel Prize. "She is so talented. I am so happy," my mother said, stroking Alyssa's hair. I stood by the oven, towel in hand, feeling out of place in the kitchen of the place I grew up. Dinner came, traditional: turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and the basil-infused gravy I'd been scolded for overdoing at 16. The table was long, with chairs for everyone but one. "Naomi, have a stool by the bar," my mother said, as if I were an uninvited guest. I said nothing. I sat in the rickety chair, facing the kitchen counter, away from the center of the meal, where Alyssa was telling her mother about her spa trip. "Did you enjoy the aromatherapy session that day?" "Great. Next time I'll do a 3-session package." I took a sip of water, my throat feeling tight. "And me?" I invited my mother to Asheville for the weekend, but she declined because she didn't want to stay in a hotel alone when I had my own place. After the meal, Mom stood up. I thought she would thank everyone and then finish. But no. "This year, I'm preparing something special," she said, pulling a wicker basket containing shiny gift boxes from the cupboard. Alyssa got first, a silk scarf embroidered with a name. Micah got a pair of dark brown leather gloves, engraved with "Always my son." "I ordered it all," Mom said proudly. "Everyone gets a share." She gave out gifts to everyone. Uncle Hank got a floral tea set. Grandma got a family photo album. Cousin Emily got a meditation coloring book. Everyone opened their presents and burst into tears. There was a constant stream of "wow" and "oh my gosh, thank you, Mom" exclamations. I sat there. My hands were still on my lap. There was no gift box in my hands. I wait. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, nothing. "Mom?" I asked softly. "What about me?" Linda, my mother, looked up, slightly raising her eyebrows. Son, Naomi, you should be grateful that I even let you walk through this door. The atmosphere froze. Uncle Hank laughed out loud. You're lucky you still remember her name. Everyone laughed. No one saw anything wrong. No one felt awkward. I looked down at my plate. I gritted my teeth. Alyssa turned to me, her lips curling into a smirk. Micah picked up more cake. Enough, I whispered. My mother heard but said nothing. She turned back to continue talking about Alyssa's silk pajamas. 10 minutes later, I stood up. I'm a little tired. I'll go home early. No one holds me back. No one asked what's wrong. Not a single lingering glance. I got out of the car. Outside, the fog was thick. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw my mother smiling, the warm light from the kitchen, a place I had never been, and I drove away. Never looked back. This trip home wasn't the first time I felt like I didn't belong, but it was definitely the first time I was so determined to leave without an explanation. On the dark road, my headlights were a weak light in the vast darkness. I sighed, trying to focus on the road, but my mind was spinning. My mother's words still echoed in my mind, as if they were still clinging to me, unable to escape. You should be grateful that I even let you step into this house. That sentence was like a knife cutting into my heart, making me realize that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I would never be valued in this family. They didn't need me, didn't want me, but they would never let me go easily. I got back to my apartment around midnight. No calls, no texts. Kira, my only close friend, texted me when she saw my Instagram update. Is everything okay? I didn't reply right away. I'd seen enough for the day. I didn't feel like I had the strength to pretend anymore. That night, I sat alone in the dark, lost in my thoughts. I remembered all the times I had ignored it, all the times I had convinced myself that my mother was just stressed, just having a bad day. But now, I realized that it was my mother who had dragged me into those bad days. And my family? They had always made me feel like an outsider. Micah, my younger brother, was always silent, but his silence was complicit. Alyssa, my beautiful younger sister, was always the one my mother spoiled the most. Whenever I decided to do something different, my mother would compare me to Alyssa, to the perfect models she wanted me to be. Every time I did that, I felt like I was lacking love and acceptance, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I didn't measure up to their standards. The next day, I received a call from my mother. The whole family tried to contact me again, calling to ask why I didn't answer. At this point, I no longer had the patience to explain. I simply said, "Not now, Mom." I realized that for too long, I had accepted the role of the sensible child in my family, even though they never considered me an important part. This time, I did not want to live in that shadow anymore. It was not that I did not love my family, but I could not continue to live a lie and sacrifice without receiving any respect. Kira sent me a blog post by a woman who had gone through something similar about realizing that family relationships aren't everything. She shared that sometimes leaving a toxic relationship is the only way to save yourself. That statement hit me. I cut off contact. I stopped, and I felt alive again, the post concluded. At that moment, I decided that I would no longer endure this coldness and lack of affection. Not because I hated my family, but because I loved myself more. I could not continue living in a family that always put me down, never appreciated my true worth. I started making plans. Over the next few days, I gradually changed my routine. I stopped answering my mother's calls, stopped participating in family group chats. When I realized that I could take care of myself and didn't need my family's help anymore, I felt relieved. I started to cut out everything that had tied me to my family. First, I canceled the automatic payments I kept for them: Netflix, Hulu, even my mom's car insurance. I had spent years taking care of their finances, without ever asking for anything in return. I paid countless bills without ever asking for anything in return. But now I don't want to do that anymore. Kira sent me another encouraging message. Remember that not everyone deserves to be in your life. Sometimes, loving yourself is the best way to love your family. A week later, my mother called me, this time with a different tone. Why don't you answer me? I'm very worried about you. Your family and I need you. I couldn't take it anymore. Her words no longer affected me. I replied in a calm voice. You need to learn to respect me as a person, not as a child according to your wishes. No one in my family understands me. They never see how much I have sacrificed just to be near them. They don't understand that I am not a cash machine, a servant. They only see me when they need me, and when they don't, I am a ghost in my own house. The next day, I went to work at my coffee shop, where I began to feel free. The feeling of no longer having to endure the judgmental gaze of my family was wonderful. Kira came over and we talked about my new life, about what I had done and what I would do in the future. I'm not coming back, am I? Kira asked. No, I smiled. This is the last time I will do that. I hadn't returned my mother's calls since I decided to leave that Thanksgiving. Each call, each text, had a familiar ring to it, a sharp knife I didn't want to receive. She had a way of making me feel guilty, of making me endure her relentless scolding. But this time, I was determined to be different. This time, I wasn't her daughter. I was Naomi. That was it. One morning, as I was getting ready for a busy day at the coffee shop, my mother called again. I recognized her number on the screen, but I didn't rush to pick up. Instead, I stared at the phone for a long time, wondering if I should continue living in her shadow. After a few seconds of hesitation, I pressed the button. Refuse. The whole day I felt like something was very strange. Even though I didn't receive any calls or messages from my family, I still felt like I was being watched, like they could see my every move. I didn't tell Kira that I had rejected my mother. I didn't want her to feel like I was abandoning my family. But I knew. Part of me was looking for a release from all that I had endured for so long. I walked into the cafe, pushed the door open, and took a deep breath. My cafe wasn't big, but it was where I found peace, where I could do what I wanted without being judged. I worked hard to get where I was. There was no one there except Kira. She was sitting in the corner, engrossed in her computer, but as soon as she saw me, she smiled. You seem okay, right? Kira asked. I sat down in the chair across from her, placed the hot cup of coffee on the table, and looked into her eyes. I think so. I don't know, I replied. But at least I don't feel like their shadow anymore. Kira smiled and nodded. That's the Naomi I know. The next day, I did something I never imagined I would do. I started to review all of my financial transactions. Over the years, I had not only helped my family financially, but also paid their bills automatically without being asked. I realized that I had become an invisible person, the only one in the family who was financially responsible and never got the credit. I started canceling the services I had been paying for my mom, like car insurance and the fees for Netflix, Hulu, and a few other services our family had been using. I didn't expect any backlash, but a week later, my mom called. Naomi, why did you cancel my car insurance? She asked, her voice filled with frustration. You know I don't know how to use a banking app. Can't you help me? I just sighed. There was nothing more to explain. I couldn't stand these words anymore. I had done enough. My love and sacrifice had been taken advantage of for too long. I can't help you anymore. It's time for you to take care of yourself, I replied, my voice calm but firm. The conversation ended quickly. My mother was silent for a moment, then hung up without saying anything more. A few days later, Alyssa texted me. The message from my sister made me feel a little regretful. Mom is so sad, Naomi. Don't you feel guilty for making her so sad? I looked at my phone screen, my eyes misting over for a moment. I had wondered if I had gone too far. But when I saw these words, all I saw was a deep disrespect. They would never understand. I didn't do this to hurt them. I did it to free myself. I replied without hesitation, "No, Alyssa. You don't feel guilty. If Mom wanted to hurt me, she succeeded. But I don't want to continue being her shadow." That night, I made a plan for myself on what I would do next. It was time for me to completely cut off all ties with my family. I didn't want to live in their cocoon anymore. The feeling of liberation was like a strong wind, blowing away all the heavy things I had been carrying for so many years. I started looking for a new office because I felt the need to have a separate workspace, not just a place for me to work, but a place where I could feel the freedom I never had. I found a small office in the neighborhood near my coffee shop. That was where I would start all over again, a life without my family. A month later, I closed on a new office lease, and Kira was the first person I told. She was happy to see me stronger and more assertive. As for my family, they continued to live in the perfect picture they had created. My mother still didn't call. I didn't answer her phone. She kept posting family photos on social media as if everything was fine. Her posts about family is everything kept popping up, while I just stood by, watching the lie they created. One morning while I was working in my new office, I got a call from Micah. For the first time in months, I didn't know how to react. Micah wasn't much of a talker, but when he called, I knew something was up. "Naomi, Mom cried a lot. She said she needed me back," Micah said, his voice wavering. I didn't know what to do. Micah's words made me feel like I was the one who needed to take responsibility again. But I had made my decision. My family would no longer rule my life. "Micah, I'm not coming back. I've been through too much. Mom needs to learn to live without me." The conversation ended, and I went back to my work. I had decided not to come back. My life was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel like I was invisible in my family. A week after I finished setting up my office and began to settle into my new routine, I got the call I had been avoiding. It was the first call from my mother since I decided to cut off all contact. I looked at the screen, not because I wanted to answer, but because I felt like I should know what was coming. It was my mother, the same old number, the same worried voice I knew all too well. I didn't pick up the phone. I looked out the office window, where the sun was starting to peek out from behind the mountains, shining on the potted plants I had just bought. The air was fresh and peaceful. But as I sat there, the tension in my heart began to rise again. Sometimes I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I was being too hard on my mother. But then I remembered all the times I had been neglected, the harsh words and coldness my mother had shown me. Finally, I pressed the button, refuse. And it was the first time I did it without feeling guilty. It was a release. It wasn't that I didn't love my mother, but I couldn't continue living like a helpless child. Couldn't maintain a relationship that was always forced and exploitative. The next day, while I was working in the office, a text message came from Kira. She said that my grandmother had called her, asking about me. She said that my mother was very sad that I couldn't see her, and had cried all night. I knew that my grandmother had always been the only person in my family who understood me, but now I was tired of hearing those words. "What did she say? Why aren't you answering me?" Kira asked me in the text message. "Mom is still the same. The whole family is still the same. They just never really loved me," I replied. And then I continued not to answer. I felt that for too long I had only thought about other people's feelings and had forgotten my own. My mother had never thought of me as an individual, but always considered me as part of the family picture that she wanted to perfect. Then the bad news started to spread. One afternoon, as I was sorting through the books in my new office, I received a text message from my younger brother Micah. This time, his tone struck me as odd. Naomi, do you know what Alyssa posted on Facebook? The whole family is talking about you cutting off communication and not paying your bills. Mom is furious. They say you've ruined the family. I have never felt so angry. We all know that Alyssa is someone who always wants to maintain a perfect family image. And this time, she posted ugly words about me, making me look ungrateful and abandoning my family. Her statuses were written with sentences like, "Family is everything, and some people just don't understand that. People like Naomi just throw it all away to pursue their own lives." It felt like a bomb went off inside me. I couldn't let this go. It was time for me to face the truth and not allow them to continue making fun of me. That evening, I sat down and wrote a long post on my Facebook page. It was the first time I had ever truly spoken out. I didn't write to get revenge. I just wanted to speak out the truth that my family had hidden from me. I talked about everything I had been through, about how I had been treated as an outsider, about how I had paid the price for the demands my family had made on me and never received respect in return. My name is Naomi Carter. I am Linda Carter's daughter. I have lived all these years feeling like I was never good enough for my family. My mother always expected me to follow her lead, to live up to her standards. But I can't go on like that. I love my family, but I can't continue to be their servant. I need to live for myself. When the post was published, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I no longer had to answer to anyone. I no longer had to endure judgment. And most importantly, I no longer had to live in the shadow of lies and unrealistic expectations. What I didn't expect, however, was my family's reaction. Right after my article was published, my mother called me repeatedly, non-stop. This time, I couldn't refuse, and I picked up the phone. "Naomi, how could you do this to your family? You hurt me so much," she cried. "Why couldn't you stay and live like the others? I gave you everything." I looked at the screen, anger rising. But I just kept quiet for a moment, and then said, "What have you given me besides expectations and pressure? Have you ever thought that I also have the right to live for myself, not as your shadow?" This time my mother didn't answer. She just sighed and hung up. The next day I got a call from Micah. This time he sounded worried. "Naomi, Mom cried a lot. She said that you ruined the family, that you were irresponsible." I didn't know what to say. Those words still haunted me. Micah didn't understand, and neither did Alyssa. My family was still trying to maintain an image that I couldn't live up to. After that conversation, I felt my resolve grow stronger. I didn't want to continue living in the script they wrote for me. I wasn't going to be invisible to my family anymore. I had lived long enough with the expectations of my mother, of Alyssa, of all of them. It was time to stand up, live my own life, and no longer let them make me their puppet. Christmas Eve, my coffee shop was deserted again, as if everyone had gone away. I sat in my small office, my fingers flying over the keyboard, my eyes tiredly staring at the words on the screen. Kira had called me a while ago, telling me to prepare myself, because my family would be trying to contact me non-stop. But still, I couldn't stop thinking about my decision. As I expected, after my post was shared, my family went into a rage. They sent all kinds of messages, from questions to nagging, from incessant calls to ignored messages. I didn't answer any of them. However, the accusations of ruining the family and cutting off blood ties kept echoing in my mind. At some point, I felt my anger subside, and I began to see things more clearly. I didn't want to continue playing the role of the exploited child. It wasn't that I didn't love my family, but I couldn't continue to live with the feeling that I was always giving in. My mother, in a fit of rage, sent me a text message early Christmas morning. "Aren't you coming back? The whole family will be here, and I won't let you ruin our family's reputation any further." Thanksgiving was a shame. But if you make this Christmas a disaster, I won't forgive you. I looked at the screen, feeling like I had done something terribly wrong. But then I asked myself, who was really wrong in all of this? Kira. She was the only one who stood by me. Unlike the rest of my family, she didn't judge me for cutting off contact. She was the only one who made me feel like I had control over my own life. Kira didn't have to say much. She just had to be there. That day, I decided to go home. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I felt it was time for me to face everything head on. Although I knew my family would not be happy to see me go, I also understood that if I didn't do this, they would continue to see me as an object, only available when needed. When I entered the house, the air was colder than ever. The Christmas lights could not hide the distance I felt from my relatives. They were still the same. The chair I sat in every year was no longer for me. I was not part of the family picture they tried so hard to keep. My mother saw me come in, but she didn't stand up, didn't say hello, just frowned and continued cleaning the dishes. "You're so late. Who told you to come here without notice?" my mother said coldly. I said nothing. I just nodded and gently placed my hat on the table. I knew she no longer considered me part of the family. Dinner began in silence. My mom continued to talk to Alyssa about her plans for work. Micah remained silent, and I wondered how he could live in this house without feeling a little unfair. I looked up and saw Alyssa sitting there, laughing and talking, while I sat there in silence, no one asking if I had eaten, no one noticing that I had driven 3 hours just to attend this party. The meal continued. People were talking to each other, but I was no longer participating. I felt like I was being publicly excluded, not because I wasn't trying to fit in, but because they had decided I didn't deserve to be in their lives. As the meal drew to a close, my mother stood up, as she did every year, to give a speech about family appreciation. She began by talking about the importance of keeping family together and about the good things everyone did for each other. And then she proceeded to give each person a gift. Alyssa got a gold bracelet, Micah got a new suit, and finally, for my grandmother, a collection of old family photos. When it was my turn, my mother said nothing, just pushed the small box aside and continued handing out gifts to the others. I looked at that box. It was like a trap. My mother was deliberately ignoring my existence. She was still trying to maintain the perfect facade for the family, but in my eyes, it was all falling apart. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, said nothing, just looked at my mother one last time, and walked out, towards the door. Just as I was about to leave, my mother ran after me, calling me back. She grabbed my hand, but I wouldn't let her pull me back. "Naomi, why are you making such a big deal out of this? Can't you just get along for once?" my mother said, her voice filled with despair. "You've made everything so bad. I love you, but you're destroying this family." I looked into my mother's eyes and felt a pang of sadness. But now I was no longer afraid. Not because I didn't love her, but because I loved myself more. "You don't understand. You never understood me," I said. "You can't love me for who I am. You just want me to be perfect. But I can't go on like this." When I walked out of the house, no one called me back. I didn't turn back. It was time for me to live my own life. And I didn't need to explain anymore. I had paid enough for the years of living under my family's expectations. I didn't look back after I left my mother's house. It was a strange feeling, but also a relief. It had been a long time since I'd felt like this, as if I'd let go of a burden that had been weighing me down for years. Part of me felt regret, but most of it was relief. I didn't have to explain anymore. I didn't have to please anyone. That night, I returned to my apartment. It had been a month since I decided not to answer my mother, not to participate in any family conversations. Kira was still the only person I could talk to honestly, without feeling like I had to save face. She was the only person who didn't have any expectations or demands of me. Kira called me in the evening after I got home. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. I looked out the window, seeing the dim lights of the city reflected on the glass. The air was still, and I felt like I could actually breathe. "Everything has changed," I replied. "I don't know what to do, Kira. My family acts like I'm invisible." Kira was silent for a moment, then replied, "Have you ever thought that they don't want to see you grow up? Don't want you to surpass them?" That question rang in my head like a reminder. Everything I did, every decision I made, my family always saw it as a betrayal. They didn't want me to stand up, didn't want me to step out of their shadow. They wanted me to forever be just a part of the family machine they had built, where everything had to follow their rules. A few days later, a message came from my brother Micah. It was strange to see his name pop up on the screen. He was the only one in the family who had remained silent when I decided to leave. But when I opened the message, I wasn't surprised to read what he had written. "Naomi, Mom is angry. She said you hurt her. Can you come home again? Your family needs you." The message filled me with a simmering anger. Micah didn't understand, and neither did Alyssa. This whole family wanted me back, to be their shadow, the anchor for their mistakes. But I had made up my mind. Not going back. No one would make me live in their guilt again. I replied to Micah briefly, "Micah, I can't go back. I'm tired of this family." A week later, I unexpectedly saw my mother appear at my door. She had a large gift bag in both hands, wrapped in bright red paper. She stood at the door, her eyes filled with something I couldn't name. From my office window, I saw her standing there, looking at the door, as if waiting for my permission. Even though I didn't want to open the door, I knew that if I kept refusing, things would only get worse. I couldn't avoid the confrontation forever. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked out. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there, her head slightly bowed, as if waiting for me to give her the signal. "I've thought a lot about what you wrote in that post," she began, her voice breaking a little. "I was wrong, Naomi. I was really wrong for not treating you the way I did. I just want you back. I don't know what else to do." My mother's words made me feel strange. It had been a long time since I heard her say something like that. In my whole life, she had never admitted her mistakes, never apologized to me. And now, standing before me, she was not the strong mother I had always known, but a woman who had failed in the eyes of her own child. I didn't know how to respond. The tension in my heart still hadn't dissipated. I looked at her, speechless for a long time. I wanted her to understand that this was not a small matter. It was not a simple argument. Our relationship had been damaged too much, and I couldn't easily go back. Finally, I said, "Mom, I can't go on living like this. You want me to come back, but how can I when you never respect me as an individual?" Mom was silent. She put the gift bag down at my feet, looking down like a child who didn't know what to do. It was that moment when I felt like I had lost everything, not just my relationship with my mother, but my entire family. As soon as my mother turned away, I closed the door, and the feeling of relief came again. It was the first time I felt that I had the right to live for myself, not for someone else's expectations. I had suffered too long in the shadow of my family, and now I would not do that anymore. The next day, I got a call from Alyssa. Unlike Micah, Alyssa always knew how to make me feel like an outcast. "You made Mom sad. Do you feel wrong?" she asked, her voice full of reproach. I couldn't take it anymore. This time, I didn't hold back. "Alyssa, have you ever wondered why Mom never loved you for who you are? Why does Mom only love you because you please her? Have you ever thought that Mom is always trying to make you invisible?" Alyssa was silent for a long time. Finally, she just said, "I just don't understand why you did that." "You will understand when you are old enough to realize that you don't always have to follow a model that others set for you," I replied, then hung up. My mother didn't call back. I don't know if she understood what I was feeling, but I knew that this time, I stood up for myself. The freedom I felt now was something I never thought I would have. I had always felt like a family entertainer, but now I was no longer a loser. I had found my own strength. A few weeks after I decided to cut off all contact with my family, my life began to return to normal. Or rather, I began to feel a sense of peace in my life that I had never felt before. No more worrying about calls from my mother, no more seeing messages full of blame from Alyssa, and no more enduring the fake conversations they always forced on me. Every morning, I woke up with freedom, feeling like I could do whatever I wanted without asking anyone's permission. The cafe business continued to grow. The office I had rented for the previous month was decorated, creating a separate space where I could work and feel comfortable with myself. I also started taking on a few graphic design contracts for small businesses in the area. While it was not a steady source of income, at least it gave me a sense of independence, a feeling I had not had during my long time living at home. Kira is the only person I still keep in touch with. She has always been supportive of my decisions, and she is also the first person I tell about the changes in my new life. We meet regularly on weekends, have coffee, and talk about everything from work to personal life. She is the only person I can talk to without fear of judgment. One evening, as I was getting ready to open the shop the next morning, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Micah. "Naomi, I'm so mad. She said you ruined the family. Can you come back one more time? We need you." Those words hit me like a bomb went off in my head. My mother still hadn't given up on dragging me into her mess. She still saw me as her child who needed to come back to make things perfect, like before. I thought I was done with this, but as soon as I read that message, I realized I still couldn't completely free myself from those bonds. At this point, I realized that Micah didn't understand, never would understand my decision. My whole family had always lived in a protective cocoon, acting like everything in the family had to be absolutely perfect, that there couldn't be any differences. But I no longer wanted to be a part of that cocoon. I sighed and replied back to Micah, "Micah, I did the right thing. My family always wants me to go back to being their shadow. I can't continue living like this. Let them know that I can't accept the family they forced me to live in anymore." After pressing send, I put my phone aside. It felt really heavy, but I knew I couldn't keep thinking about it. I had to keep moving forward. A few days later, when I was preparing to open the shop early in the morning, a surprise call came from Alyssa. This was the first time she took the initiative to call me after so many months of silence. "Can you hear me?" Alyssa asked, her voice strange and serious. I stared at the phone, not knowing what to say. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to answer. "I know you're angry, but Mom is sad, Naomi. She can't go on living like this. I don't know what to do." Alyssa's words made me feel like I was caught in a storm. She still tried to maintain the image of a perfect family, and now she wanted me back. Wanted me to be a shadow of everyone else. But I couldn't do that. I had decided to cut this relationship off, and no matter how much someone wanted to pull me back, I still couldn't change that. "Alyssa, you don't understand. Mom can't love you because you're my sister, you know that? Have you ever felt the coldness she gives me?" I said firmly. This time, Alyssa did not argue back. She was silent for a long time, then simply said, "You will understand. I just want you to be happy." I paused for a moment, then replied, "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine, but I'm not coming back." I hung up, not wanting to continue the conversation. Alyssa had said what she needed to say, and so had I. No one could change my mind now. I was no longer a shadow they could control. Later that week, as I was cleaning up and getting ready for work, another text message came from my mom. This time, it wasn't a scolding, but an apology. She said she wanted to see me and talk. For the first time in years, my mom had actually admitted her mistake. I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to see my mother, to listen and understand better what she was feeling. But the other part said I didn't have to continue this cycle. I couldn't live in this cocoon forever. I decided not to answer my mother. Even though I knew I would have to face a big wave, I had enough strength to move forward alone. My decisions would not change for anyone. And I knew, even if I had to continue walking alone, I would still be strong. The next day, I went to the coffee shop and sat alone in my usual corner. No more mom, no more family, no more worries about unreasonable expectations. I felt free. Kira called me this afternoon asking if I was okay. "You know, you look different now. You're so much stronger, Naomi," Kira said, her voice full of encouragement. I just smiled, saying nothing. My sense of freedom was a precious gift I gave myself. And I knew, no matter what happened, I would never go back. My business is getting better and better. My little coffee shop is starting to attract more customers, even if it's just local people. But every day there are small steps forward. I'm proud of what I've built, even though the work is still difficult and not really profitable. But the important thing is that I'm working for myself, not for the expectations of others. I still remember the feeling when I stood in my coffee shop, in the cozy space that I created with my bare hands. The first customer was an old lady who often came to read books, always smiling gently when ordering a cup of black coffee. I suddenly realized that, even without a family to celebrate or spend holidays with, I could still create a place for myself to feel the warmth. This coffee shop is my new family. Kira was still my companion, the only one of my relatives I could call a friend. She always cheered me up when I felt tired. But life was not always smooth. My mother did not give up. She continued to send tormented messages, to call me incessantly. She said she still wanted me to come back, that she could not live without me. But I had made up my mind. There was no reason for me to return to the family I had left. It felt more than freedom. It felt liberating. This life was mine, and I no longer wanted to live under the shadow of unreasonable expectations. My mother, unlike before, did not call me for 2 weeks. But then, one weekend evening, as I was getting ready for a busy day at work, my phone rang again. It was my mother. I did not answer her call. A moment later, another text message. "Naomi, you can't live like this forever. Your family needs you. I really need you home for Christmas." Conflicting feelings welled up inside me. Part of me felt hurt because my mother still hadn't let go. But mostly, I felt determined. I had made my decision. I couldn't continue living in that shell. I didn't reply to messages, didn't call back. My mother had enough chances to change, but she still lived in that cocoon, never accepting my change. And I couldn't continue to live in a family where love was controlled by expectations. That Christmas Eve, I didn't go anywhere. The cafe was deserted, and I was alone. However, the feeling of loneliness was no longer something I feared. This feeling of loneliness, in contrast to the hustle and bustle I had experienced in my family, now made me feel at peace. I no longer had to live in their glass cage, where I always had to try to live to please everyone. A call came in unexpectedly. This time, it was my brother Micah. His voice was worried, but I could still feel the determination in his words. "Naomi, Mom is having a hard time. She keeps crying. The whole family needs you. I can't keep going like this." Micah's words left me confused. He still didn't understand. He still saw himself as the reasonable child my mother had always expected of him. But I was no longer that little sister. I had lived long enough in the family mold they had drawn for me. And now, I was building a new life, one without those unreasonable constraints. Micah, I can't go back. You have to understand. Mom can't change, and I can't continue living under that control, I replied, my voice calm but firm. The next day, something I never expected happened. My mother came to my coffee shop. She didn't say anything. She just appeared at the door. When I saw her standing there, I felt a strong wave wash over me. She was still standing there, as if she wanted to break down all the walls I had built up all this time. My mother stood in front of the shop, holding a large bag, her eyes filled with disappointment, but also hope, as if she had not given up on trying to get me back. But this time, I didn't feel afraid. No more fear, no more feeling like I had to explain. I had made my decision, and I would stand by my decision. She stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Then she spoke. You can't go on like this, Naomi. I really need you back. We can't go on like this. The family needs you. Her words didn't change me. I looked into my mother's eyes, and I didn't feel like I had to seek forgiveness anymore. I had forgiven her a long time ago, but I couldn't live in that cocoon forever. Mom, I can't go back. I've made up my mind. You can't love me for who I am. You want me back, but that's not my choice anymore, I said firmly. My mother was silent. It was the moment I felt like it was all over. There was no explanation, no reconciliation. We stood facing each other, but neither of us said anything more. After a few minutes, she turned away without saying anything and simply left the cafe. That night, as I closed the coffee shop and sat alone, I felt a sense of relief. I may not have been loved the way I wanted to be, but I loved myself enough to dare to live my own life. My family would never fully understand me, but I no longer needed their acceptance. A month has passed since I met my mother at the coffee shop. The days that followed were no longer as uncertain as before. I don't know if I did right or wrong, but one thing is clear. I have stepped out of the family cocoon where I always felt trapped. Whether my mother called or texted, I decided not to reply anymore. They could sigh, they could blame, but I was no longer the sensible child in their eyes. I was Naomi, and I had the right to live for myself. This morning I woke up late after a long night of dreamless sleep, something I haven't had in a long time. Everything around me was the same. The air was warm, the bed was the same. The cafe was still open to welcome customers, but I realized that I was different. I no longer felt like I had to live according to a pre-established family model. I had found a new image of myself and I loved it. Kira called me that morning as she always did. She was the only person I could share everything with, not just because she was my friend, but because she understood me in a way no one else could. After I told her about my decisions over the past month, Kira just smiled and said, I see you've gotten a lot stronger. Don't think too much about your family. They'll understand, or if they don't, that's their problem. I smiled. It was true that I sometimes worried about this, but I knew one thing. Family is people you choose, not people you force, and now I have real friends. Later that week, I received a letter from my grandmother. She wrote that my mother was very sad, that she couldn't bear not having me in her family life. But in the letter, she said that she understood why I was doing what I was doing. She told me to be true to myself and not let others dictate my life. Her advice, though belated, was an unexpected comfort. I didn't respond right away, but I read those words over and over again, thinking about everything. My grandmother was the only person in my family who understood me, who always supported me even though I was not perfect, even though I was different from what my mother expected. My mother always wanted me to be someone she could be proud of, but she never saw the real me. Even though I no longer want to interact with my family, the feeling still haunts me sometimes. The expectations, the control, the harsh words from the past, all like wounds that have not healed. And a part of me, as determined as I am, cannot stop thinking about them. The feeling of loss is real, but I know it is necessary for me to move on. One day, I decided to see my mother again. But this time, I did not come with the mood of a helpless child, not to apologize or ask for forgiveness. I just wanted her to understand that I was old enough to decide my own life. I called my mother, and this time she did not say anything, just remained silent, as if waiting for me to continue. "Mom, I've lived long enough under your expectations. You can't keep trying to make me a sensible child. I need to live my life, whether you don't understand, whether you're mad or not," I said, my voice firmer than ever. At that moment, my mother was silent for so long that I thought she would not answer. Finally, she just sighed and said, "Whatever you do, I still love you." My mother's words made me feel like something very deep had changed. Even though she didn't agree with me, she still loved me, in her own way. And I realized that even if I continued on my path, I couldn't cut things off so easily. But the important thing was that I didn't have to live for her demands anymore. I lived for myself. After this confrontation, things slowly returned to normal. My family still had the same attitude, but I learned not to let them control me anymore. I continued to work, to rebuild my life without their approval. It was a life of freedom, and it truly meant something to me. It wasn't always easy, but I knew I was right. On Christmas Day, I didn't go to the family party. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. In fact, I was happier sitting in my apartment, reading a book, and enjoying a cup of coffee. The family party was no longer important to me. For me, family was now the people I chose to love, and who accepted me for who I was. Kira came to visit me that afternoon, and we sat and talked. I told her about my mixed feelings after meeting my mother, about the changes in me and in my family. "I don't need a family to feel valuable," I said, smiling slightly. "I have everything I need in life, love and the freedom to be myself." Kira laughed loudly and patted me on the shoulder. "You're right. Don't let anyone take away what's most precious to you, Naomi. You're already strong enough." A week later, I got a call from my grandmother. She told me that my mother had apologized, that she understood me better after that conversation. She said that my mother could not change completely, but at least she realized that children need space to live their own lives. My mother did not call directly, but at least there was a change. It was a step forward that I did not expect. Finally, after so many months of waiting, I felt truly free. Not because I had severed ties with my family, but because I had learned to live for myself. My decisions were no longer governed by my mother's expectations, no longer caught up in the perfect shell my family had built. Now, I was the real Naomi. Even though my family continued to maintain the facade, still keeping up the fake Facebook image, I didn't care anymore. My mother tried to contact me again, but I just looked at those messages without feeling the need to reply. I haven't said a word in 3 months, and I know that this decision was the right one. They will never change completely, but I will not live in that hurt anymore. The cafe business continued to grow, and I began to receive more support from customers. I felt proud of what I had built, and I also began to learn more about business, marketing strategies, to make my cafe stand out in the area. Receiving compliments from customers, receiving encouragement, I felt that all the difficulties in the job were worth it. But one thing I realized was that work wasn't everything. I needed to find a part of myself that I had lost, the part that I had sacrificed for my family all these years. After all, I couldn't live up to their expectations, and now I had a chance to live true to myself. Kira has always been my best friend. Not only does she understand me, but she is also the one who is always there to help me when I am in trouble. After all these months, She is still the only person I can share everything in my heart with, without feeling scared or worried. One afternoon, as we sat in the cafe, Kira looked at me and smiled. I see you're different. You're stronger, Naomi. You found yourself, haven't you? I smiled, and in that moment I felt everything I had been through. From having to please my family, to sacrificing myself to please everyone, now I was free from it all. And it felt really great. Even though I no longer have contact with my family, my life is not a lonely one. I have built for myself a small community, true friends, customers who have become friends of the coffee shop. They are the only people who help me realize that, not family, but true friends are the greatest source of encouragement. One day, while I was preparing lunch for a group of regulars, I received a call from my grandmother. She was the only person in my family who had always supported me, never judged me despite my differences. Naomi, I know your mother did wrong, but I really can't stand not having you in my life. I know you're doing the right thing, but your mother needs you more than ever. Her words made me hesitate. I didn't know if I should go see her, if I should see my mother again. But then I thought about what my grandmother had said. She understood me, and she didn't ask me to change myself to please anyone. But could I forgive my mother? After a while, I decided I wasn't going to go back, at least not right away. I needed to live my life, and I knew that if I went back to them, I would lose myself again. As time went on, I felt like I was starting to live a truly free life. My cafe grew. I started to make new connections and meet new people. Regulars started to introduce me to their friends and colleagues. My cafe became more than just a place for me to work. It became a place where I found connection and freedom. Late one evening, as I was closing up the shop and getting ready to go home, I received a call from my mother. This time, I didn't feel angry or upset. I just felt a strange sense of peace, as if I was ready to hear her again. Naomi, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I know you were right, and I just want you back. I still love you. My mother's words made me feel relieved. I didn't have to go back to my family, but at least I understood that she still loved me the way she did. I no longer felt stressed or anxious when thinking about my family. My relationship with my mother might not be perfect, but I accepted that. The next day, I made plans for a new life. I didn't have to go back to the past, but I didn't have to completely cut out my family either. Instead, I would keep a healthy distance and continue living my own life. I wouldn't let my mother's or anyone else's unreasonable expectations make me forget my own worth. My mother didn't understand me for so many years, but finally, I understood myself. I found a way to live my life without being bound by family prejudices, and that is the most precious thing I have. Finally, as I sat in the coffee shop one peaceful morning, I realized that I had truly lived a free life. Not because I had cut off my family, but because I had cut off all the ties they had created for me. I had lived for myself, and that was the most important thing.